Speaking of fighting games and indie fighting games, even though Virtua Fighter isn't, it's small, but it's not indie. Uh, Speaking of those, you know, I did like a best indie games or like my indie recommendations you should pick up like a couple weeks ago, and a dev of a game I really like, Murfight. Shout outs to Murfight and Gridlock. Commented on the video saying, "Hey, don't forget to what up, Wonderful Deluxe said, hey, don't forget to pick up Murfight." Right, and I was mostly talking about games that are very recent, came out this year or maybe last year. Murfight's almost 2 years old, but I realized that I don't really tell people to pick up indie fighting games because they have some issues. And they're not usually gameplay issues. So let me go ahead and tell you guys. I think generally, indie fighting games can be just as well put together and gameplay cohesive as a mainstream AAA fighting game. As a matter of fact, some of them, and sometimes they're even better. A good example is I really love the gameplay implications and the design of a game like Pocket Bravery. I think Pocket Bravery is well put together. It has really deep systems, very interesting characters, and simple enough and retro-inspired gameplay that a lot of older people who like fighting games but don't really have the time to invest into the Street Fighter 6s or the Tekken 8s of the world can get into and just understand and be like, oh, okay, I get what's happening here. I'm having fun, but of course, this is still, a smaller fighting game. It doesn't have that same polish. A lot of times, that's the big thing they're missing, right? That's like the quality thing they're missing. Because there's a quality thing and there's a performance thing. The quality thing is, of course, polish, right? They generally don't look as nice. Maybe they don't have as good sound effects. I think most of them have gotten to the point where they have very distinct hit and block effects because we've been doing that for over 40 years now. But they don't rival their contemporaries. Even though they're indie, sound design is very important for fighting games because it means the difference between understanding if you got a hit as a hit confirm or if something has been blocked. If you play with the headset, if you play with the sound on, those are things that matter to some people. The other is unfortunately a performance issue. And I don't mean that the games are unoptimized or the games are buggy. When I say performance, I mean you as the player don't get to perform a lot of the things that make fighting games interesting. Unless you have a local scene, how do you generally find matches in modern video games? We don't really have LANs anymore. Like, LANs aren't a thing. Let's be fucking real, okay? So unless you're doing... but those aren't the ones that I'm referring to. But yeah, I think that the like, I'm not going to say that because you're going to do the soak on D's nuts, but I know that game. Yeah, that's a real game. Don't worry, Chad. He's not trying to get me with a D's nuts setup, but he could. So I'm not going to say the word. Anyways, I'm going to show you guys 3 modern-ish indie fighting games and why I don't recommend indie fighting games. And it's because, like I said here, shout outs to Murfight. I think the game is really fun and it's great. And if you have a local scene or you have friends or family who love fighting games and will play with you at home, you'll probably be able to find matches. But as it is now, you are almost never playing online unless you are playing it as a Discord fighter, right? Playing in a Discord because Murfight, maybe they have an official Discord where you can find matches with people and that is how you'll get your matches. Same thing with something like Dojo Masters. This is also recent. This came out this year. This came out in July. Be the change you want to see in the world? Be the change you want to see in the world? Yeah, I would just say make a Discord. I can't say I want to see indie fighting games do well, so I think everyone should play the indie fighting game that I like. Because it may not be for them. As much as I can say that, it may not be for them. The indie fighting game I like may not be the indie fighting game you like. You might like Pocket Bravery. Someone else might like Die by the Blade. Which, I'm going to assume this also doesn't have a very big active community. Yeah, doesn't have a very big active community. A little bigger than... okay, they're all pretty small. Let's just be honest. They're all relatively small. Like, in the eyes of someone who's a fucking hater, they're going to be like, these are all dead games. They're not. They're not dead. They just have very small player bases, very dedicated player bases. And as you see, some of these games aren't even reviewed negatively, right? Like, these are very good, oh god, except for that one. These are actually very well reviewed games. But unless you have a local scene most of the time you aren't going to find a match in a lot of these games. And a lot of the times, visually or audio wise, they may not be as polished as AAA games. I personally do not recommend indie fighting games to people before I know if they have an active scene. If you are a person who likes to play online, who doesn't really care about the survival modes, the time attacks, the arcade modes, if those are things you care about, yeah, I actually recommend you pick up all of these games. I've never played any single player content in this game, but it was fun anyway. So pick up the Die by the Blades. Pick up the Dojo Masters. Pick up the Pocket Bravery. I love this game. The DLC characters are only $2 each. But get the game. It's super cheap. It's like $20 or $30. Same thing with Murphite. Murphite, super cheap. Very nice developer. He's an awesome guy. They're an awesome person. I'm not sure what their pronouns are. The games are all really interesting and innovative. Has like regular 0 people online. It's very impossible, but it's very active on Discord. See, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if finding a Discord is fine with you, then boom, play these games. But if you are a lonely gamer, someone who doesn't want to interact with people, doesn't even want to have to type out a Discord message saying, you want some games? I don't have mic though. Maybe don't pick these up. I will say I like them all though. And if you got friends or family who are interested in fighting games, you want to make a party night of it, you should pick up these games. A lot of people see that and think it's literally 0 people playing ever. Yeah, it's like, I understand that this is an issue because it also says 24-hour peak 1. That's impossible. It had to have been 2. I'm going to assume this had to have been 2 so that 2 people could play, right? We could also look at another indie fighting game that's actually free, so it shouldn't have the same issue, but it does. It's free. This game is free, so it should have players. Would you fucking look at that? It doesn't. It had a higher all-time peak than any of these. Barely more than something like Pocket Bravery, which I think had like 300. Thanks, Justin Wong. I played against that guy. I beat him the first game. We won't ask about the other 5 games, all right, chat? I beat Justin Wong in a fighting game. That's what matters. If you're an indie game fan, if you're an indie fighting game fan, don't take this as some sort of attack on the games that you like or love, because all the games that I actually show here, I've played and I really like. I think they're all really interesting and creative. But generally, I don't recommend them as a person who, outside of playing in Discord with friends, I don't play a lot of online games that require large numbers of people unless they're very active. I just don't do it anymore, right? I played a lot of Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur became less active. I didn't want it to feel like a Discord fighter to me. I didn't play it as much. The same thing with something like Virtua Fighter 5, Ultimate Showdown. Same thing with any fighting game I've liked. DNF Duel is another good example where the player base is relatively small, but they're extremely welcoming and extremely active. So if these games look cool to you, pick them up, but be cautious. You may not find people in matchmaking. Indie games are some of the coolest there are out there, but just know that certain genres of indie games may have issues with population, especially in games where population is necessary for them to thrive and survive. Tell me some of your favorite low population multiplayer indie games in the comment section down below. Hey, actually do that for fighting games, for shooting games, for boomer shooters with multiplayer, like Proteus. Shout out to Proteus. I like Proteus, but they do multiplayer nights on Saturdays, and sometimes I'm at locals. I think it's a great game, though, and the multiplayer is fantastic, but I can't recommend it to people because there's not always an active player. Anyways, leave those comments down below about your favorite indie multiplayer games, so maybe other people will discover them and be able to play them with you. Wouldn't that be sick? Anyways, also like the video and subscribe to the channel. This has been Beanie Thuggish for the YouTubes, talking about why I generally don't recommend multiplayer indie games to people. Signing out and saying peace.